Hello, family. My name is Marv, and you're listening to the very first episode of Fit Recovery Radio here on the radio channel. First ever episode, brand new show. I'm going to be your host. My name is Marv. I'm super excited for this. I'm super blessed to have this opportunity, and we're going to go from there. So what is this radio show going to be about? I am a big proponent of, because that the disease of addiction affects us mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically, we need to recover mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. The problem is, a lot of time the physical healing is not addressed and it's neglected. And I personally believe if you don't have a well-rounded recovery process in all four areas, recovery is going to be limited. So, my favorite method of addressing the physical aspect of recovering from our addiction, and it could be to drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, whatever. Obviously, when drugs and alcohol are involved, there's going to be a little bit more physical damage outside of food addiction or like self-harm addiction than, let's say, gambling. But we still need to recover, and the best way to do that is through fitness, in my opinion. So that is the whole premise of Fit Recovery Radio here on the Recovery Channel. I'll be honest, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm not going to have any intro music or special effects probably for the first couple weeks. What I am doing is taking a leap of faith and getting this started because I am a procrastinating perfectionist. And that makes things a little difficult to get new projects started that you're not really familiar with. So this is my best effort. Please bear with me. I am also currently getting over the sickest I've ever been in my recovery process. So if I sound a little congested or a little monotone, I apologize. That won't be the case moving forward. So again, very first episode, what am I supposed to talk about? Well, I think we need to start, besides the premise of the show, which is, once again, let's blend fitness with our recovery and recovery with our fitness. So that's the whole premise of the show. But before we dive into that, and my plan is to have guests go over various topics, set up a Facebook page so we could do Q&A sessions where you submit me your questions or whatever. I think it's important to know who your host is, who I am. So I think for today, I'm just going to give you my story, what it was like, what I did, and what it's like now. For me, my story personally, it kind of goes back to my childhood, long before I ever picked up a drink or a drug. So what I identify is a alcoholic addict. If you go to 12-step fellowships, then based on what fellowship you attend, you might say I'm just an addict or just an alcoholic or alcoholic addict. So I identify as both. And again, 12 steps works for me, doesn't mean it has to work for you. There's many paths to the same top of the hill, but in my experience, for my story, I needed the 12 steps. So again, my name is Marv, and I'm going to be your host. I'm 30 years old. I live in Southern California in San Diego. It's actually kind of sunny out right now. So to all of you listening on the East Coast or around the world where the weather's not so great, I do apologize for rubbing that in. So hopefully you'll give me a chance to let me atone for my sins right there. So 30 years old. My clean and sobriety date is June 22nd, 2013. That is not my first date. More on that later. But long before I ever picked up a drink or a drug, I had that alcoholic addict type thinking. What does that mean? Well, I put it this way. My first escape from reality was fantasy and daydreaming, and my first drug of choice was your approval. So let me explain what I mean by that. As far as daydreaming and fantasizing, that was my first escape from reality. I think that's pretty normal for kids to do. But let me state that before I get into this, I should have stated first, I had no sense of identity even as a kid, no sense of self-worth. I was always uncomfortable in my own skin. I don't believe I came out of the womb being a self-loathing narcissist, which by definition cannot exist, or that egomaniac with an inferiority complex, or the fact that I hated myself even as a kid. But I learned those behaviors at such a young age, they became ingrained in me as my normal state of being. So because I hated myself, because I had no sense of identity, I never had an internal identity. I always used something, or worse, someone, to identify myself by. I needed to escape from reality, and I needed that first drug of choice, which was your validation, so I could feel okay about myself. Because, again, as a young kid, I was not just uncomfortable in my own skin, I had self-loathing and would do whatever I needed to do to get validation from others, good, bad, or indifferent. So as the fact that I had no identity, my identity would change every couple of years. In the beginning, it was positive identities. Towards the end, it was negative identities. I didn't care, really. I just wanted to identify with something or someone because I had no eternal identity. So, back to the escape from reality. We all daydream as kids. I think that's normal, but I would excessively daydream. Or I just sit in my room for hours on end and just daydream about, at this age, I'm going to be this, that, and that. When I'm a little bit older, I'm going to be this, that, and that. So I had two types of daydreams. And the first is pretty normal, especially as a young boy. I think a lot of guys out there will relate. I wanted to be big, buff, ride a motorcycle, be good at sports, get all the chicks, all that, which is normal, you know. Now, I was very unathletic growing up. I was a late bloomer into my body. And I tried to play sports my whole life, so I was trying to hang out with the jock crowd for the majority of my life, and I got picked on a lot because of that. So that in itself was a daydream of doing those things, but you know, that's still positive. There's nothing wrong with that. My other set of daydreams, however, get a little dark and twisted, and you could see that I learned to play the victim at a very young age. The other set of daydreams I had this one specific daydream, just to put it in perspective. So I would just sit in my room and fantasize about, I want to be the star quarterback on the high school football team for homecoming. Again, nothing out of the norm for that. You know, I'm super unathletic, so it's never going to happen, and I know that, but I just imagine this. You know, it's my imagination. It's my fantasy. And here's the deal, though. I would dream about throwing the game-winning touchdown at homecoming as time expired, and then getting crushed by the defensive lineman and have my neck broken. That way I'd be paralyzed and have to be carted off the field, and the crowd would be cheering my name, and the girls in the stands would be crying, and boom, if I could just get paralyzed at 17, 18 years old, my life would be perfect. You know, and that is not normal. That is that self-pity, play the victim mentality and mindset that ran my entire life. Later in recovery, I learned why I did that, but it just goes to show, at a young age, I played the victim. Now, my entire family's had a bunch of health problems, and I had a lot of health problems growing up. I've had 9 major operations, a head injury, multiple broken bones, torn tendons, some from genetics, some of the surgeries, obviously not the tendons or broken bones, but some from an accident or two. But I learned to play the victim at a very young age. So that is that's part of my story. So, you know, the other drug of choice thing that I talk about was needing your validation. So what I mean by that is just recognize me, you know. I wanted to be positive. I was raised in a super strict religious family. That's just how I was raised. My parents were very involved, but it was extremely strict. And so because I had no identity, my identity at a young age was the church, because there was a sense of expectation that I was going to go the church life. So my grandparents introduced me as, this is our grandson, he's going to be a pastor someday. And their faces would light up when they would say that. And so I was like, all right, well, they're super proud of me, so that's what I'm going to embrace. So I did like altar boy, handbell choir, singing solos in the church, confirmation, got voted best Christian attitude when I graduated from a very, very small private Christian school that was, I believe it was kindergarten to 8th grade, and I went to a different private Lutheran preschool. So I graduated best Christian attitude, and I say I want to be a pastor, and it's because I got a lot of validation from my family. You know, like my great-great-grandma literally founded the church that I was raised in, so there's a lot of expectations. I'm the only like non-missionary in the family. So that was my identity. And I go from a school of about 200 kids where I still feel ostracized from my peers because I'm not really allowed to hang out with them, to a school of 2,000. It's public high school. And I quickly learned that that identity of being the church boy wasn't really well received in a public high school. And I also, to be honest, was kind of sick of being stifled and sheltered and kept different from my peers. I wasn't even allowed to really hang out with friends at a young age. I couldn't see PG-13 movies till I was 13, stuff like that. So I would just, and peers would know that. So it would just be kind of challenging, because I have no identity. I need validation. I'm an easy target. I'm getting picked on. So I really had a hard time. So grades were my identity, right? In my family, A's are not celebrated; they're expected, and that's fine. So I got really good grades, and I remember. Not to get too graphic, but the first time I tried booze was, I think, sophomore year in high school, drinking Wild Turkey out of a water bottle in a movie theater that some girl had, and I wasn't really impressed. I thought it tasted like gasoline. I was like, ugh, how the hell does anybody drink this crap? So wasn't really impressed with that. Funny story about the first time I attempted to do drugs in the form of smoking marijuana. Now, bear in mind, though, I obviously was introduced to heavy narcotics such as morphine and Percocets and stuff like that from all the various surgeries I started having in 6th grade. But the first time I did drugs recreationally was on Halloween night, sophomore year as well. I remember it was me, 2 twins, and this stoner friend of ours who, he's provided everything. And here's my sick need to feel cool or feel accepted. So we're about to smoke, and the stoner asks me and the 2 twins, have any of you guys smoked before? And the twins are like, nope, never smoked. So they've already set the table that I could be like, no, I haven't smoked. But because I wanted to feel cool, because I wanted that validation, because I wanted you to, recognize me, I was like, yeah, man, I've smoked before. So they pass me the pipe. It's not cherry. I don't light it. I pretend to inhale, pretend to cough, make a comment at some really good blank, I curse, and obviously I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So that just goes to show this table was set for me to be honest, say no, I've never done it, but I wanted to be accepted, so I lied. And then that story gets out in high school, and I get picked on a lot for that, and just it is what it is. So I wasn't really hooked on anything yet. I had that addict, alcoholic thinking. I needed other people to recognize me for my identity, all that crap. But 17 years old, at my 17th birthday is when everything changed. And before I get into stat, I just want to let people who know are just tuning in, this is Fit Recovery Radio on the Recovery Channel. I'm your host, Marv. It's our very first episode. I'm just telling you my story right now. And then we'll dive into what this show is going to be at the very end, once again, in case you missed the beginning. But 17 at my 17th birthday, life-changing event where I was in a pretty bad accident of my own doing. This is 2002, maybe 2003. So I don't know if you guys remember the show Jackass. It was pretty big, so we were already doing book reports with video cameras. So it was a natural progression for me and my friends to start recording ourselves doing stupid stunts. And it was at my birthday party, waiting for my dad to come home to take us to Dave & Buster's. And I apparently bomb a hill on a little Hot Wheel scooter. So that was like a Razor scooter, but not even a name brand. I couldn't even get a name brand. But a Hot Wheel scooter, bomb a hill, and I try to jump a wooden pallet. And I pull up too late, clip the front, go flying. And it's on video. I've watched the video once. I'll never watch it again. You see my head bounce on the concrete like a basketball with no helmet. I snapped my wrist, tore my rotator cuff, collarbone, re-stress fractured, some vertebrae in my lower back that I had already injured, and I landed in the ICU for the next 2 days. So it was pretty serious. I wake up, I don't know my middle name. To be honest, I have zero recollection of any of this. That memory hasn't come back, and I had to do a lot of speech therapy to where about a third of the English language, I couldn't come up with the words. They would be on the tip of my tongue, and I couldn't come up with them. And so I went from this straight A AP student, my identity is grades, and I'm trying to hang out with the jock crowd because I'm playing basketball for high school, but I'm riding the bench. I go from that to overnight, could barely keep up in college prep, getting threatened to be put in remedial. When I come back to high school, a couple weeks later, after all the speech therapy and hospitalization time, I'm like, look, well, I can't admit it was on a little scooter. How pathetic is that? They already think I'm kind of a wacko anyway, so I'll tell everybody it was a skateboard. Well, all my friends are at the birthday party. Go and tell the whole high school, well, Marv almost killed himself on a scooter. So that really did a lot for my image. So I got very, very depressed. Doctors warned my parents that would happen, but I got really depressed, and that was the first time I actually got loaded recreationally. I still remember this, of getting drunk that first time on 151 rum and Smirnoff Ice. So yes, for those of you keeping score, my first 3 booze items I tried were Wild Turkey, 151, and Smirnoff Ice. 3 of the nastiest freaking things there are. But I was determined to get drunk, and I should have realized I had a problem right away. And I did, but not directly as in gonna have a problem. It was more along the lines of, this solves everything. Everything. I was somehow bigger, stronger, faster, smarter, sexier, could talk to women, whatever. I was comfortable in my own skin. And that was that moment, that we have and we decide to chase. So that was a turning point for me. Shortly after, I started smoking weed routinely. I started abusing my painkillers. And within a year of that, I have graduated to using cocaine on a daily basis. And my health deteriorates. So I just had a head injury, and instead of being grateful that, as you can hear, I'm pretty damn fluent now, I made a phenomenal recovery. There's actually a case study about me about how well I recovered, despite there actually being definite swelling and a little bit of bleeding in my brain, which, on a side note, you could still see if you brain map me, so that's a trip. But I made this huge recovery, and instead of being grateful, I play the victim, and I feel woe is me. My identity of good grades is gone, and so instead of allowing my brain to heal, I start pounding it with drugs and alcohol. And that became my new identity, because right away from the very beginning, my friends and I realized I could do more drugs and drink way more than them. And I was somebody who, if we could only steal a 6-pack and there's 4 of us, I'm not going to drink a sip, because I'm not going to choke down 2 beers, which I hate the taste of. I will choke down all 6 if you guys let me drink it all, but if I'm not going to get drunk, I'm not going to drink. And so I started mixing everything. That became my new identity of how effed up can I get and go to high school events. And that became a new identity. So long story short, I get caught by my parents somehow. I'm pretty sure I got caught driving drunk or something that we always do in high school, which, by the way, the times I was on the road loaded is definitely in the 4 figures, if not 5 figures, so I am eternally grateful that I never caused anyone harm. We'll just leave it at that. Definitely wrecked a few cars, but I got caught somehow, and they drug test me, and I failed for everything on the drug test. So they go, look, you just failed for drugs. I still graduate high school despite I'm skipping class and not doing well, and I'm doing a bunch of drugs. But my grades were so good prior to the injury in my junior year. At 17 years old, I still graduate with honors. I still get accepted to multiple colleges. My parents go, look, you just got caught. You're not allowed to leave San Diego. You could go to community college. You could go to San Diego State University. So this is 2004. For those of you who don't know about San Diego State University, in 2004, I'm pretty damn sure it was still in the top 10 party schools in the nation. It's still up there, but they've actually done a pretty good job of cleaning that up. And so that is a fantastic environment for a budding drug addict alcoholic. I get more and more into cocaine. I'm skipping class. I do the stereotypical disappear for 3 months. I come back 30 pounds lighter. Bloody noses out of nowhere, shifty eyes, sunken face, pale skin, and all the things that go along with that type of drug use, carpet crawling, the situations you put yourself in. But yeah, we all have those stories, I'm lucky to have made it out there alive, but I flunk out. So I last 1 year at San Diego State before they asked me to take my services elsewhere, which is my fancy way of saying I flunked out. So I have to tell my parents. Once again, they drug test me. Once again, I failed for everything possible. I think it was like an 8 or 9 drug panel. Because I had one of those famous, this is my last night drinking and using blowout binges, tomorrow I'm going to get clean. Tomorrow I'm going to get sober. So I get sent to an outpatient program at 19 years old, and I was not ready. Let's leave it at that. to sum it up, how I was not ready is I would introduce myself when it would be my turn, because it was they call it an IOP, an intensive outpatient program. I'm here in San Diego. I'm not going to give any names, but it's in La Mesa, on the side of a freeway. I go, look, my name's Marv. I'm an addict, and I have 19 days clean from drugs, but I drank last night. And they're like, well, you have 0 days. Like, no, I have 19 days. Well, Marv, alcohol is a drug. Not for me, it's not. I'm too young to give that up. But I got off cocaine. I got off the pills. I started dabbling with meth right before that. I got off that stuff, and so that was how I would justify my drinking and using for the next 8 years. So I actually became a dry drunk and a static addict. I quit drinking and using altogether for a period of time, so I could pass drug tests. At 19 years old, I went to my first Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. So once again, 12 steps is part of my story. They don't have to be a part of yours, but I need the 12 steps. I don't want to be just abstinent. I want to recover. So I went to an AA meeting at 19 with guys from the program. It was a closed meeting, and I didn't know what that meant. But what I did know is when a young kid, probably a couple years older than me, identified himself as an addict, they kicked him out. And so that was my excuses. That's why I didn't need AA, because, quote unquote, how dare they kick somebody out in time of need, and that was my justification and rationalization. I got off the quote unquote hard street drugs, the meth, the coke. I think that was all I was doing at that time, drinking a lot. And that was how I would justify a slow and continued return to drinking and using on a daily basis. So I believe as addicts and alcoholics, we all have incredible mouthpieces. That's why we're in our disease for so long. And not only do I have a mouthpiece to talk myself out of trouble, which I am phenomenal at, holy crap, I am a smart mofo, and I really learned at a young age that I was pretty good at manipulating people and stuff like that to get what I wanted. So I needed to not only justify and rationalize my drinking and using my behaviors to you, but to myself most importantly. Because deep down, even though I rebelled from the church, I was raised with morals. I was raised to that Leave It to Beaver family environment. And so I knew what I was doing was wrong, so I needed to convince myself it wasn't that bad. Once again, to people just tuning in, this is the very first episode of Fit Recovery Radio on the Recovery Channel. I'm your host, Marv. I'm just going over my story right now so you know who your host is going to be moving forward. So far, we're going to do every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And hopefully you guys will like this and tune in again as we start getting into the nitty-gritty of not just my story, but making sure fitness and physical health is part of your recovery process from drugs, alcohol, food, gambling, sex, whatever. Like I said, I was a static addict and a dry drunk. I didn't do any steps. I didn't do any recovery. But my identity obviously got changed from I do drugs to my identity became I'm the guy who got off cocaine. And I would preach about true character is what you do when nobody's looking and crap like that. And I go back to junior college and I start getting really good grades because I have to get really good grades so my parents get off my back. And slowly but surely I start to return to drinking and using. It starts with just drinking alcohol occasionally. Then I begin smoking weed again. And it just kind of progresses from there. Now, because I have no identity, sometimes I use someone to identify myself by. So at this time, I was using a relationship to identify myself by on top of the fact that I was that guy who got off cocaine. And that ended, and because I have no identity and it was ripped from me and I have no sense of self-esteem other than that this chick is with me, I went to hell in a handbasket. So for about a year, I was miserable and unhappy. And I was determined to quote-unquote show her. I believe I was 21 and a half. And in my clever little brain, I decide that I'd started lifting weights with friends. They introduced me to the gym. I believe I was 19 years old, before my outpatient, and I hated it because I didn't automatically know every exercise on the face of the earth. I wasn't as strong as my friends or even I was pretty damn pathetic compared to the quote-unquote muscle monsters of the gym. So I'd only go to the gym drunk or high. And I'm talking about like high on cocaine and drunk off my ass off Black Velvet whiskey. So how I didn't have a heart attack, thank God I didn't. But I had started to, once I became that dry drunk static addict, I started to lift a little bit more, and I kind of liked it. But this relationship ends, so I need to show her. And so my decision to show her is I'm going to hop on steroids. So the first chance I get, I sign up to take some steroids and meet this guy. It's kind of shady, but he tells me this is stuff Barry Bonds use. You need to inject. Do you drink? I was like, occasionally. He's like, well, do you smoke weed? No. He's like, well, you do now. And that was kind of an alarm. But my friend's mom taught me how to inject. Stole needles from her work as a nurse, and I began using steroids at 21 and a half in an effort to show her. Bear in mind, I've only been lifting weights for less than 2 years, so I'm nowhere near my genetic potential. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm taking a bunch of supplements, thinking they're going to fill the void in me, because I had decided in order to show her and to feel good about myself, I wanted a quote-unquote perfect body like you see in the muscle comics, aka bodybuilding magazines, or just our beauty culture in general. And so that's what I did, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I didn't know the long-term effects. I just knew that I need to stick a needle in my rear end twice a week, and I got really big, really fast, really strong, really fast. That ultimately leads to a bunch of female attention, respect from men, and I was hooked. During this time, as I'm doing my first cycle, I am still drinking and smoking weed occasionally. And drinking and steroids is not a good idea. Not just because of the potential aggression issues that thankfully I never had, but that's a lot of strain on the liver. And at this point, I had changed my major. I decided I wanted to be a physical therapist as I was working in a hospital in the physical therapy department. Loved it. This is my new thing, you know. I'm becoming a quote-unquote bodybuilder, even though I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And I am going to go to school and become a physical therapist, and I have found my calling. And I decided to pull a geographic, as the Alcoholics Anonymous book says, and I run away from San Diego, one, to get away from that ex, two, to get away it gave an excuse was I need to get away from where I did all those drugs because there's just too much history here and stuff like that. And I accepted to go to college in Northern California, and I didn't even visit it. I just said they approved me because once again I was getting those good grades, and I ran away. And I went to Sonoma State. It's an hour north of San Francisco. It's a really rural town between Petaluma and Santa Rosa. It's really small. There's like cows on the side of the 101 freeway, and that's where I went, and I ran away. And I went up there drinking occasionally. I was doing steroids, but I wasn't smoking weed. And by the end of the first semester, I'm smoking weed every day, and I'm blackout drinking constantly. And let's just say, because of my identity issues, getting validation from others, in particular women, through, as you know what, became part of my routine. Because again, I hate myself. I can't look at myself in the mirror and recognize the man looking back. I need you to validate me, and so I can feel okay about myself for just right now. I had no self-worth, no self-esteem, no identity, nothing. What I did have was rapidly developing body image issues, codependency, using of people, then kind of feeling guilty for it. So then I would need to use and drink, use drugs and drink to kind of mask that. And on the surface, like, it looked like I was living the life of my dreams, because everything short of riding a motorcycle, I was big, buff, getting girls, popular, finally get at sports because I finally grow into my body, all that. Life of the party, everybody likes me, even though I blacked out all the time, so I can't tell you. More often than not, I would just call everybody hey man or hey you for women, because I couldn't remember their names, but apparently we'd spent a lot of time together. So I got really good at I never called anybody by the first name, so people wouldn't realize how few people actually cognizantly remembered. I was living the life. I joined a fraternity up there, which once again is a great decision for a budding drug addict alcoholic. And drinking and using picks up. I've developed massive muscle dysmorphia, body dysmorphia issues, which I think is a little bit more prevalent than men care to admit or gets advertised. So I'm here to tell you, my name is Marv. I'm a drug addict, alcoholic who has body image issues, self-esteem issues, muscle dysmorphia, if you want to be more specific, all that. And I don't have to do that anymore. So there I am in college, and but I'm getting good grades because my motto is I work hard to party harder. Because if I get good grades and those straight A's again, like I was raised to get, my parents won't ask me if I'm drinking or using. And I joined a fraternity. I'm literally pledging a fraternity, taking physics, physiology, psychology, like one or two other classes in the same damn semester, and I managed to get straight A's while pledging. And I become everybody's favorite classmate, and I say that sarcastically because I would come to class drunk and or high all the time. And then I would set the curve on every single exam and then go back to being a drug addict lush. And how I would do that is there's certain pharmaceutical study aids that would allow me to study for 36 hours straight, set the curve, and go right back to drinking and using. And people would get really frustrated with me, and I thought it was cool, you know. I had the best of both worlds. I was getting my good grades to satisfy my parents and satisfy that part of me from a kid. I was living my dream life, and I was able to be drunk and high every single freaking day. And to sum it up, to put it in perspective, where I was, I'm studying kinesiology, how to rebuild, repair, and strengthen the human body, and how I would treat myself. This will be the last time I get graphic. I have my bong, my bottle of various pharmaceutical pills, because as long as they're from a doctor at some point, they're not my doctor, I could take benzos, sleeping pills, and painkillers. And I take all those, I drink my glass of whiskey, and I inject my syringe full of steroids, and then I would ride my bicycle to campus and study exercise physiology in a lab, or take an anatomy final, or whatever. And that's how well I treated myself, which is insanity, and I was okay with it. You know, the first time I got any inkling that it wasn't normal to be doing what I was doing, because, you know, I'm in a fraternity at this point, and we know how fraternities go. You know, it's a drinking club and a using club, and they were really big growers of marijuana and stuff like that. Was a kinesiology, an old teacher who used to run the department, told a story about some kid asked him for a letter of rec for grad school, and he said he'd give it to him, and as the kid turned around, he had a can of dip in his back pocket, and he asked him, is that a can of tobacco? The kid said, yeah. He said, well, I'm not going to write you a letter of rec because you're not practicing what you preach and treating yourself right. And I was like, maybe what I'm doing isn't normal. Maybe that I'm researching what vitamins and supplements or other drugs to take to either quote-unquote protect my organs or enhance the effects of these drugs isn't normal. Maybe playing with your brain chemistry on a daily basis, manipulating serotonin, dopamine, all that crap on a regular basis isn't normal. But because I hated myself and I just couldn't face life clean and sober, I continued to drink and use. And it was what I did was I projected this image of cockiness, you know, confidence bordering on cockiness, to hide the fact that I hate my effing self. So it was false pride encapsulating self-loathing to an extent that I don't even firmly have a grasp. Like, I hated myself. I would do weird extremes in behavior where I would do my daily flex routine in my mirror, yet I would only focus on the holes in my physique. And again, because I don't know everything that I know today, this is bodybuilding specific because I was a wannabe bodybuilder. I always had a hard time getting my chest to grow, or you know, so I would just focus on my chest being a weak point. And then I would pick on stupid crap like I don't have enough ab veins or enough separation between my biceps and my brachioradialis, which is only visible in a couple poses anyways. But stuff like that, you know, where I was just, you know, sitting on that pity pot, you know, trying to feel bad, you know. And so that's what I was like in college. Relationships started and ended and almost killed myself over it, to where teachers are even asking me, Marv, you need to stop drinking. You're my best student in class, which is why I'm not reporting to campus. When you come to class with booze on your breath, or you're stoned, or you're high, you're on something. You're not clean. We know you're on drugs. I'm just concerned for your health, you know. allowing me to take finals a week later because I finally had a mental breakdown one semester, from all the drinking and using and the self-sabotage from the breakup and all the drugs I was using to try to keep myself awake pretty much for 7 straight days to study. And it was just a mess, I was broken, I was defeated, yet I couldn't let anybody know because I was petrified, right? I was petrified everybody would figure out I wasn't as cool as they thought I was, that I was a fraud, a fake, whatever, a manipulator, a cheat, a thief, all of that, So every day was, it was fun, but it wasn't, if that makes sense. And I still managed to graduate that college with really good grades, and I graduated in 2010 with a Bachelor's of Science in Kinesiology. The emphasis was in exercise science. My goal was to go get my doctorate in physical therapy, and that was 2010. I graduated in the first semester, so not at the second semester, which is kind of odd. So that was December 2010. I graduate with that bachelor's degree. Really good grades, all of that. Letters of rec. That teachers conveniently / thankfully left out the part that I was a lush and a drug addict. But just focusing on my amazing academic accomplishments and the fact that I was engaged in class and would stay after and ask them questions. But I do all that, and I moved back to San Diego at that time. The reason why I did that at that time was because my mom had gotten very, very sick with Lyme disease, which is a nasty bacterial infection, and they had hidden it from me. Now, I had quit coming home during winter break because that relationship that went wrong, that I almost killed myself over, she was here in San Diego, so I was hiding from that, and they talked me into coming down to help out, and that's what I did, and I did not help out. I got worse and worse. I used all these events during the time in college. I hurt my wrist to the point where I was realizing that my dream career in physical therapy was no longer a possibility, even though I took all the graduate entrance exams loaded. Got into my dream school, USC physical therapy program, which was the number one in the nation at the time, to get my doctorate in physical therapy and master's in occupational therapy. But I had injured my wrist one too many times. After 3 surgeries, it wasn't getting better. And I just went to shit. I went to hell in a handbasket. So instead of helping my mom, I began to steal her meds. My mom's dying. She needs painkillers for pain, other types of pharmaceuticals to end her seizures, and I'm stealing them. And I just do shameful things like that. Every day is a chore. I'm too afraid to live, yet too scared to kill myself. That's how I sum it up. And it was a mess. My body shuts down. I moved back in January of 2011. By November of 2011, I go from 220 pounds to 147 pounds. My body shuts down from all the toxins. I enter psychosis. I go through withdrawals. And it was 11/7/11. I withdrawing. I need to speed this up because I got 20 minutes left in the very first ever episode of Fit Recovery Radio on the Recovery Channel. This should have been my bottom. I crawled down. Literally, I'm dragging myself down the hallway to my parents because I'm living with my parents, which I don't know why they didn't kick me out. They claimed they're actually going to kick me out the next day, but I crawled down the hallway, at this point believing that I had drank too much cough syrup because at this point I'm downing over-the-counter medications, anything to numb the pain and help me pass out. And I think I overdosed on that when in reality I'm starting to withdraw from all the other drugs. And so I enter a lockdown unit of a psych ward. I stay there for quite a while. I know I did the whole not sleeping for 9 days. I had DTs and tremors for 3 full months. Couldn't eat yogurt or soup or cereal or whatever for 3 months. I go to a $30,000 inpatient program, treatment rehab, after the psych ward. Go to outpatient, move into sober living, do cognitive behavioral therapy, get a lot of treatment at a very, very expensive high-end place here in San Diego. And that should have been my bottom, right? I have this new identity of claiming I'm that guy who hit his bottom and is Mr. Recovery. But here's the problem. I am not 100% convinced I'm a drug addict, alcoholic. I know I have a problem with it and I have addictive personality, but I tell myself it only got so bad because events X, Y, and Z happened. I'm a smart guy. I could figure this out. I learned from my mistakes. And not only that, I'm not 100% honest. even in treatment, there was some lies that I was telling still, even though they were strangers. And I got a quote-unquote sponsor, which was a voicemail I talked to. I didn't work steps. I didn't work on myself. So I was merely a dry drunk and a static addict. And what does somebody do who's just abstinent and still batshit crazy? Because drugs and alcohol were not my number one problem, but they were my number one solution to everything. And I had the emotional maturity of about a 10-year-old at best. Because let's not forget, from a head injury, most of my childhood memories wiped clean. So I don't really know what I'm doing. I have these behaviors of, manipulating, womanizing, getting what I want, talking, bashing others to feel good about myself, all that crap. I'm doing that, and so what ends up happening is I start secretarying meetings dirty. I start taking dirty tokens, working quote-unquote dirty steps, and all that crap. And this will be the only you statement of the very first ever Fit Recovery Radio episode. If you ever have the chance to use, and you think it'll just be between you and your higher power, I plead with you, I beg of you, do not do it. Okay? That was far worse than any public relapse and raising my hand, because that voice of addiction keeps telling me I'm a POS, I'm no good, I'm a fake, I'm a fraud, all that crap. Because left to my own devices, that's what I am. I'm a liar, I'm a cheat, and a thief. I'm a liar for every time I would tell myself, okay, Marv, this is the last bottle, the last vial, the last sack, knowing damn well it wasn't going to be. If I was drinking and using, I most likely was going to be copying or picking up again by the end of that night. Okay? I'm a liar for that. I was a cheat. I was a cheat for cheating myself out of a life I could be proud of, cheating myself out of relationship with my higher power, and most of all, cheating myself out of relationship with myself. And I was a thief. A thief for when I'm in my disease of addiction to whatever it was I was addicted to. I steal myself away from my family, friends, and loved ones. And that's when I am left to my devices. Not a pretty picture. And I'm secretary meetings dirty. It goes on for like 5.5 months. I don't have the courage or the fortitude to raise my hand and tell people, look, I messed up, I goofed up. So I convince myself, because remember, I'm a good rationalizer, justification person, that if I have a quote-unquote public relapse, it'll benefit my recovery. So that's what I do. I stage a public relapse going out drinking. I come back to the meeting I secretary. I tell on myself, and they go, was that the only time you used? And once again, just like with smoking weed the first time, I've been given an opportunity to be honest. The table has been set, and I say that was the only time. For some reason, even though I hated myself still, my ego, wherever the hell that just decides to pop up randomly, would not allow me to fess up. And because I didn't fess up, that was a secret, and I came and I did that commitment one more week, and then I pawned the bag off, and I would go in a secretly relapse, or that's what I thought. My behavior as a chronic relapser is get a little dry, drunk, static addict time, then I start to use it in secret, and I don't want to tell anybody, so I do the charade of going to meetings and working with a sponsor and doing some steps. I got a real sponsor this time, and I failed to mention that when I was in that first sober living, it was a co-ed one, and I started dating a resident, so we broke that rule. I'm not dating your first year of recovery, and while she remained clean and sober, she has over 5 years, I did not, and she stuck by me, which I don't know why she did, but she did. And she did an intervention after that first secret relapse. I come back, I get a real sponsor, I start to work steps, then I get a job where I'm very successful as an insurance agent, making a bunch of money. So I decided that I'd rather make money than work on myself, and to kind of keep this quick, I start using again in secret. Here's the problem. Because I actually got a real sponsor and actually worked a little bit of some real steps before I started relapsing in secret again, my drinking and using is forever effed, okay? I cannot get that release or that rush of euphoria that the drugs and alcohol used to. And I firmly believe, because deep down in my soul, since I've been finally introduced to recovery, I know there is a better way to live, okay? So the only way I had left to go was to start injecting and using drugs intravenously, because I'm very comfortable with needles. I just doing the vein things freaked me out. And thank God my higher power saw it fit for my girlfriend, who's in the program and sober and clean, to catch me using. And on June 22nd, 2013, I finally hit my bottom. Of course, when I get caught using, she goes, "What is this?" I do your stereotypical, "Well, it's not mine, even though you found that in my jean pocket, but it's not mine," you know. So on June 22nd, 2013, I didn't know it then, but that was when I found my God, the gift of desperation. That was my moment when I realized each and every theory of how I could drink and use like a gentleman and not have things go to hell in a handbasket had failed. You know, because I'm that smart guy, right? This can't be 1 + 1 = 2. It has to be E = MC squared. And I didn't know it then, but that's what happened. I met my sponsor and a sponsee brother at a very rich area in San Diego. And I go, "Look, I know I told you on the phone, you know, the last couple... It took me like 4 or 5 days to actually admit the full depths of my relapse. You know, I told you it was only a couple pills and this or that. Well, okay, I've been doing handfuls of pills, tons of this drug, tons of that drug. There's tons of needles at my house, syringes, vials, all of that. I need help." So I'm broken. I'm desperate. And so I quit my job. I put everything in storage. And I check myself and volunteer to go to the hardest program I could find in San Diego. It's not a rehab. It is, they call it a short-term intense residential behavior modification program. It sounds like a car accident for those of you in San Diego. Most people, about 80-90%, are there on nudge from a judge or trying to get out of major jail time. It carries a lot of weight with not only the state system but the feds. But I knew it was the hardest place there was, and I needed desperate. I tried the 30,000. I tried the psych wards. I tried therapy multiple times, various medications, outpatient, inpatient. It didn't work, right? So I need to do something. So what I do is I go there and I actually volunteer to stay an additional month. And I complete the outpatient 6-month program. And I graduate from that program, and I'm here to say that graduating from that program meant more for myself, my life success, than graduating from college with a 4-year degree. And I have a really good degree in kinesiology. I've learned more about myself in that program, and I learned the tools that would enable me to work my 12 steps to a far better extent. You know, I learned in there that I was a self-loathing narcissist. I was raised in a dysfunctional family. I was a procrastinating perfectionist, and I love to play the victim. And I learned this why. For 27 years of my life, because remember, even as a kid, my fantasy is playing the victim. When I play the victim and I feel that self-pity and sorry for myself, I then feel entitled to do whatever the hell that I have to do to make myself feel better. Okay? Because again, I was raised with Leave It to Beaver standards and values. Even though I rebelled against it, deep down I knew what I was doing was wrong. You know, all the sketchy stuff we have to do to be drug addicts, alcoholics. I don't need to go into details there. We know, you know, the criminal acts that we do. We all have our stories, and I learned that. And I worked on my honesty. You know, honesty begins and ends in honesty with me. I know how this program works. Honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. For me, if I'm not honest, if I'm 90% honest, I might as well be 100% untruthful. So I worked on my honesty in there. How I did that was, I'll sum this up really quick, then I want to get into my recovery because we have only about 10 minutes left of the very first episode of Fit Recovery Radio on the Recovery Channel. I realized I was telling lies in my one-on-ones, which is like you interview with other residents, let them get to know you, and vice versa. And remember that first inpatient program where I said I was telling lies? Well, I would put lies in my first step, you know, and I told these lies again because I need that validation. So they were, you know, exaggerations, embellishments, fishing stories, or just crap that happened to my friends, or just flat out made up stuff. And when I would tell these stories, people's faces would light up, and I get that validation. So I realized I was telling these lies once again, and it's like, look, I decided I'm not going to make the same mistakes again. So with the help of the counselor, I found the courage to quote unquote encounter myself, where I go in front of the whole house of 50 guys and the counselor, and I go, look, these are the lies I told. I went through each and every lie that I told, what really happened and why I told them. And I was scared shitless, shaky, sweaty, hands trembling, all that. And that was a turning point. That was a spiritual experience for me. And since then, honesty has not been that big of an issue. Now, I'm not going to claim that I'm 100% honest all the time, but instead of saying 5 to 10 lies an hour, it's maybe 5 to 10 lies a week. And I'm getting better at that every single week. And I worked on things like that. And I learned the tools, right? I learned the tools that I needed to apply to my recovery, that my ego is just ran my life, yet I hated myself, and just the total little oxymoronic nature of me, of studying how to repair the human body and then how I treated myself, whatever, and I started to feel not self-love, but a little bit of self-like. I worked on my self-esteem, and when I got out, I moved into sober living. I stayed into sober living for well over 2 years. I'm still dating that woman, that strong woman in recovery, and I share a bunk bed with a man for 2 years because I had got my own place with a practicing alcoholic in the past, thinking it would be okay, a nice house, and it didn't work out. I got a job that I was overqualified for that teach me some bleeping humility, and worked that job to the best of my ability. And here's the most important part. I worked all 12 steps within a year. Okay, I personally attend Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. I attend both. I get a bunch out of both. I have a support system in both. I view them interchangeably. Some people may have a problem with that. I think every single 12-step fellowship has a lot to offer. Find the one that you feel most comfortable in. I know addicts who go to AA. I know alcoholics who go to NA. For me, I just identify by whatever fellowship I'm at in respect to the traditions. But I worked all 12 steps. I worked them to the best of my ability. That treatment center, forcing me to look at myself in a light, allowed me to work steps far better than I would have had before. In fact, my sponsor, who has his sobriety time is older than me, he has over 30 years, said I've never seen anybody work a 4-step that quickly or that thoroughly, because I was desperate. I needed to do something different. I saw where I was headed, jails, institutions, or death, and I was done. I found a higher power I could work with. Now I had a hard time with God, religion, spirituality, so I'll tell you a quote that saved me. Religion is for people who don't want to go to hell. Spirituality is for people who've already been to hell. That's not to bash on religion. I definitely believe in God, in a higher power. But that's how I was able to do business. And I worked on myself. And remember, I'm this bodybuilder fitness junkie. Even when I'm loaded and drinking and using every day, I'm still working out. It is crazy. Well, I needed to work on myself, my insides, so my outsides wouldn't define me, because I have body image issues, muscle dysmorphia, body dysmorphia. I assign my sense of morality to my body, my eating habits, my workouts, whatever stupid crap I want to assign my morality to. So I worked on myself, and I got a gift that I didn't realize how much would change my life. The greatest gift I've ever been given, because of my recovery, in the rooms of recovery, is the gift of self-worth. Having self-worth changed everything in my life. Allows me to get rid of toxic people, places, and things, the courage to be assertive yet not aggressive, to ask for help, to treat myself right, to not beat myself up over trivial bullshit, because again, I would use my workouts as a way to punish me. If I didn't eat a quote-unquote perfect diet, which is impossible to do when you're a drunk and a drug addict, I'd beat myself up, all that. Whatever I could beat myself up with, I would, because I was convinced I was the devil incarnate, and what I needed to realize was I wasn't an evil person needing to get righteous. I was a sick person needing to get better. And through the steps, through the fellowship, through the rooms, through my treatment program, I learned new solutions. I learned new solutions to life. Drugs and alcohol were my number one solution to everything, good, bad, or indifferent. I learned new solutions, I needed to do my laundry clean and sober. I needed to use a microwave clean and sober, to ask for help, to not let my feelings get hurt. And, I don't have a fancy euphemism for addiction, but I have alcoholism. The ism stands for incredibly short memory, so I need to work on this every single day. Just because I did all 12 steps last year, I called my sponsor yesterday, went to a meeting yesterday, talked to somebody in the rooms yesterday, doesn't mean I don't have to do it today. Every single day I need to work at this. We do this one day at a time. Hell, in the minute it was one brutal, hellacious minute by one brutal, hellacious minute, but this is how we do it. We break it down into 24-hour periods. Hour periods, minute periods, 5 minutes, I don't care. Do whatever you got to do. So I found the gift of self-worth. I have something resembling self-esteem for the first time in my life. Now that is very fluid, but on most days I have something that goes through that. I have faced things in my recovery that I never thought I could have, that would have been reservations in the past. I faced the passing of my mother, and I was able to remain clean and sober and be a help to my family. When my grandfather died in the midst of one of my secret relapses, I read his eulogy that he wrote by himself, by his hand, in his handwriting, at his funeral, high on his pills that I ransacked the house for. I didn't have to do that with my mom. How I found out, I come home, she's laying on the ground in the front room, my dad's climbing the walls. I had to man up and help out and not be selfish, and I was able to do that. I've also had my girlfriend battle with breast cancer, and in the past, with me and my selfish behavior and womanizing and hatred of women, to be honest with you, I said, you got the big C, I'm out, peace, good luck with that. And my other two reactions, I just don't want to say publicly on air, but I faced that, and I faced it with some dignity and didn't make it about me, because I would use my mom, who was sick and, going to die, as an excuse to win favor with the opposite sex or with other people of, look, I'm the good, strong, sacrificing son. I didn't do that. And most importantly, in my recovery, I found the courage to quit my corporate job and start my own business. So I'm fully self-employed as of last July. I started a company called One Rep at a Time, hence like one day at a time, which is why I'm doing something like this Fit Recovery Radio on the Recovery Channel. Very first episode ever. I know it's like bare bones, no effects. I actually kind of messed up the Audacity recording earlier that I'm going to have to figure out. So there might be a little choppy part. But, things like this to where I'm trying to carry my message that recovery is possible and that fitness should be a part of your recovery. Fitness, like recovery, is a journey. It's not a destination. Fitness can enhance your recovery. It can enhance your life and vice versa. And we need to recover mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. And fitness is the best way to do that. I'm happy to say on most days my body image issues are not present. If they do arise, it's actually a sign that my spiritual condition is lacking, right? Because I need a spiritual remedy to my problems, my problem of being an addict alcoholic. There's not a chemical solution for a spiritual problem. I was born with a broken thinker. I was born with a void in myself, feeling less than, uncomfortable in my own skin, and I need to fill that void somehow. And being in recovery, being a contributing member of Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, gives me purpose. I firmly believe I went through everything that I went through to be in the position I am today, whether that be all my surgeries, body image issues, earning a bachelor's degree, being obsessed with bodybuilding, personal training, running a YMCA, working in a hospital setting, a strong background in physical therapy, whatever, all that stuff put me in the position I am today to carry this message of making fitness feasible and possible and relating that to recovery. Because again, there's a lot of challenges facing us in recovery when it comes to fitness and getting healthy, and that's what the basis of the show is. So again, my name is Marv. I'm going to be your host on the Fit Recovery radio show on the Recovery Channel. You just listened to my story, so we're not really going to go into that. I don't really know what I'm going to talk about next week, but at some point, my goal is to have guests to come in and interview them, to take questions from you guys, discuss various topics and whatever, and just have this grow. Together we grow. I hope my story helps somebody who could relate with. I try and get as vulnerable and as real as possible. I try not to cuss, so if anything slipped out, I apologize. But I'm super grateful to the Recovery Channel for giving me this opportunity. Super grateful to Carrie personally, who reached out to me. I hope you guys got something out of it. I'm super excited for this. I am doing this. The goal is not to get rich. You don't get any pay for this. My goal is just to, by getting vulnerable and sharing my experience, strength, and hope, not opinions, bullshit, and dope, that somebody can, gain something. And then if we could get people to start making fitness a part of their recovery, that's even better. That is the whole goal of this show. So I really appreciate you listening. If you listen the whole time, holy cow, I just rambled for an hour. So again, my name is Marv. You've been listening to Recovery Fit Recovery Radio on the Recovery Channel. If nobody told you they love you today, I love you. You are not evil. You are worth it. Give yourself a chance, okay? I didn't think I deserved a life I could be proud of because of my low self-esteem. I deserve everything I've been given and will continue to be given so long as I make my recovery my first priority. So thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week, Tuesday, 6 p.m. Pacific Time, 9 p.m. Eastern. And with that, I'm out. Stay blessed.